All right. So this is the first Future of Marketing session. Uh, Planning to do these monthly. So we don't know when the next one will be, but sometime next month. And basically, we'll plan on kind of holding this on an ongoing basis. And yeah, it should be a good way to stay up to date with what's going on in the marketing field. Nope. Let's see. There we go. So a lot of you guys know me, but Alec Kauffman, I'm the founder of Annovation, do tech and strategy for small businesses. Um, and then I'm going to turn it over to Ian to tell us a little bit about himself.
I'm Ian. I've been doing marketing work primarily on the experiential side for the last probably almost 30 years. So all types of events, promotions, you name it. I've started a few businesses along the way and have really just come across so many people asking the same questions, which is part of how we got into this future marketing conversation. From people asking, how do I manage SEO to, how do I engage on social media to bring a bigger audience? It's just so many small businesses all with the same questions, and there's no forum that I found that's really great to help them embrace this future of marketing. So here we are.
Perfect. And so, yeah, today we're basically going to go through three topics. It's going to be AI SEO, so ranking in AI search, live selling, it's kind of what is that and when to use it, and then content machines. That's sort of the rise of these AI influencers and AI content. How to use that, or just at least how to being aware of it and talking about it a little bit so that you know what it is. Um, and then send us topic suggestions because, like I said, we're planning to just keep doing this every month, and then we have a rolling list of topics, and we just kind of pick three and go through it. This session is part of the Annovation community. So the Annovation community is something on school.com. It's basically a community that's made to help prepare you for the future. So we're doing sessions like this. There's a weekly future talk every Friday at 7:30, and the whole goal is to kind of help whatever you think the future is going to be. We're going to meet as a group and kind of as a community work toward understanding it and figuring out what that means for our businesses. All right. Any questions before we jump in?
Nope, got it. Good outline.
All right. So, starting off, AI SEO. So, ranking in AI search. So, SEO, search engine optimization, it's kind of where you're page ranking. So, you want to obviously when someone types in something that's relevant to your business, you want to rank high for that. But what is happening in this is there's kind of a new shift where if you're using AI and the user's not actually clicking those 10 links, right? They're not actually looking down the different list of links. You're kind of at this interesting point where okay, how do you rank in the search summary or how do you rank in the chatbot answer or how do you rank when the agent asks, "Hey, go buy me some like special soap or something like that. We're out of soap and wherever." It's like it goes and it does that action, but how do you make sure that you were high enough on the list that your business was the one that actually got that business? So that's kind of the opening part to this. Ian, what do you think about AI search? Have you messed around with some of these tools? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's super important. I personally am not Googling for anything anymore, unless it's something very specific. If I have a question, I generally do go to AI and ask, what are the top 5 of this, or what is the process of doing that? And I think that's becoming more and more prevalent. I have not gotten into a ton of this, although I am a little familiar with general SEO and how these AI agents kind of comb websites, and as far as like formatting you can put on your site and things like that, um, to get both standard SEO and the AI SEO.
Mhm. Whitney, go ahead.
This might be a super basic question, but when I search myself, my company in ChatGPT, I see that I come up as like number 2, but should I be using like an incognito tab, or is there, I guess, is that a good way to search, or what do you recommend as like for accuracy?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to tell if you rank with AI SEO, so if you're kind of getting into that answer, a great way to do it, ChatGPT. You can go to you go to ChatGPT in an incognito tab without a ChatGPT account. So if you're doing that, then it doesn't have any data from your previous queries. So you're kind of getting a ChatGPT that's just the more generic one, and it's in an incognito tab, so it shouldn't really know much about you. It might be able to figure out something like, oh, this request is coming in from Portland or something like that, depending on how things are set up. But basically, when you're doing that, then you're giving it kind of the lowest level of like it doesn't know anything, and then you're asking about it. That way, you're not getting your own content and mixed up in there.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
I'm probably, in regards to the people that are currently on the phone, probably the lowest bar of technology. Um, I thought that was interesting what Ian said specifically about, I now seldom use Google and I go to AI. And it's interesting that yesterday I was in a meeting and just a one-on-one with somebody, and we were kind of going through a planning effort. And there was a question about something, and she went right into Chat GPT rather than Googling it. And I think that one of the questions I have, and this is probably a little bit tangential piece, is what is the standard? We've all become very accustomed to using Google, and what will happen to Google? And how are they going to reinforce their brand with an AI emphasis in the future? Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
Well, Google has Gemini, and
Yes.
Gemini is their AI model. Actually, one of the things for ranking is if you search anything right now on Google, not everything, but a lot of them will pop up with this AI overview,
Yes.
and that AI overview, that right there is kind of like an AI answer
Okay.
for search.
And they're leveraging the foundation of Gemini in
Yeah,
regards to that. Okay. Thank you.
and Gemini's everywhere in the Google ecosystem. It, like when you go into your Gmail, things like that. If you look in the top right corner,
Yeah.
you'll see that little Gemini icon. It's kind of all across. And actually, if you have a Google Workspace account, Gemini's included in that.
Yeah. Noted that a change in my Gmail specifically, that there frequently, or almost always, there's some AI suggestion or recommendation for enhancement.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
So there's a couple different pieces here. We talked about there's the AI overview, and then there's like the chat bot in ChatGPT. Um, there's also these AI search things. There's Perplexity, ChatGPT. Some of those use specific AI search. Um, and then there's AI agent actions. One of the things that I think is interesting, we're not at that last one yet. We don't really have a lot of AI agents making these decisions yet. But it does get down to the point of like what shows up when you do the search. And so that's kind of the step one, is what shows up when you do the search. And then once we have the ones that are actually making decisions on someone's behalf, so like kind of trying to make it really, really easy to basically buy things, get the thing done that you need to get done. Like if you're trying to, one of the examples that is always being used is booking flights. I don't know if that's actually going to be as prevalent of a use case because, you know, there's a lot of things that go into flights. But when you look at that and you think, okay, if people aren't going to actually go to the Alaska Airlines website, they're going to just go and ask their AI tool, and that tool is basically going to say, okay, here's all of the different flights. Which ones do you want? And then you're actually going to be able to book it there. It's not actually going all the way to your website. So you have to have you have to be prevalent enough in the response to actually be ranked there. And so kind of this first step of getting in the answer is the way to get into the door for the second step when it's an agent making a decision. Ian, do you think that's correct?
Yeah, and I think that can apply to pretty much any business. You know, if somebody's like, you know, there could be travel, it could be product based, it could be service based. I think it's going to really take off in a pretty quick and scary way.
Yeah, so I think the activity here is like when you have the time, just go to a chatbot, ask about your business. The way that I've done that, you know, let's see if I can share my screen here. So you want to open an incognito tab, and then you'll want to go to ChatGPT. And I went over this earlier, but this is basically the activity part. And you just want to make sure you're not logged in at all. And then you ask it basically about your business. So I could say, who is and we'll see. Oh, interesting. There we go. So we got a digital agency in Croatia specializing in web design. We got a biopharma. We got technology advising and strategy. That's me. So I'm right there. And I got this one here. And so you can see the sources. So if you're digging into this deeper, you're like, okay, where did it what missed here? And I'm like, okay. So if I go dig into the sources, it pulled Instagram, it pulled profiles, biocentury.com, then it pulled my website, and then it pulled this one here. So you can see the sources that it uses. Now that's just for searching for you and seeing if you exist. But the other piece is if you ask something that's more along the lines of what your client would be looking for. So if I go for, let's refresh this. Let's see. So it's kind of like the same query that someone might type into Google. I mean, maybe they don't phrase it quite like that, a little less natural language. But you can see it pops up these different things. It's going to pop up these different resources. And so you can see Oregon Entrepreneurs Network got in there, Portland Incubator. So there's a good amount of stuff that you can see that ranks in this. And then you can see what it did to make the response. So if you check the sources, so it looks like they had Portland Local Mentor, Small Business Development Center. So these different resources are what it used to then make this response. what's interesting here is it didn't just grab Oregon Entrepreneurs Network's website. It actually grabbed their Wikipedia page. So there's kind of like a surface area component to this, where you want to make sure that you have the resources that the AI model would want to grab and reference in order for it to actually indicate that you are kind of like the one here that's trying to help. So it's like if you want to show up in this AI search and summary, you want to have the resources that kind of prompt that the model then grabs and points to.
Alec, would you like us to save our questions to the end or insert them while you're sharing?
Go for it. What are your questions?
Well, first of all, I'll let Whitney go first. Or maybe she had a comment too. Whitney. Okay, I'll go.
She's talking, but I think it didn't come. The audio didn't come through.
Muted. Maybe she's muted still. We don't hear you, Whitney.
Okay, Scott, go, and then Whitney will come back to you. Hopefully the audio fixes itself. And Whitney, you might leave and rejoin. That might fix it too. Okay, Scott.
One of the things, when you showed, when you did the search on you, right? And the search engine optimization strategy or philosophy, does the fact that a company has been in existence longer play a part? Like, for example, your company name has only been in existence under you for a short period in comparison to maybe a group out of India, example. Does length of business operation play into this?
I mean, I think it's length of business operation, but it's also it's more like presence. So how wide is that that space that you've started to occupy? Like for OEN, it was grabbing their Wikipedia page. So like if you're very present, that's kind of what it's playing off of. It's not like you could be around for a short time, be very present, and have a lot of different media across different areas. That's probably going to get you more attention through the AI model than someone who's been around for 50 years but basically made no online presence at all.
Okay, gotcha. It's kind of like, yeah, got it. Thank you.
I've also read a bit about the AI searches going through back through like metadata on the sites, and also like the more specific you can be with the things you post on your site as far as articles and stuff, and also using simple language that AI can understand. So sort of writing on your site for a robot to comprehend, like short sentences, easy to understand words, and very specific topics, is supposed to be a good way to get that.
Whitney, did we get your audio back? Let's see.
Yeah, sorry. It was like connecting with my phone and I had to change the settings. But you just answered my question too. It was just piggybacking off of Scott. So thank you.
Perfect. And feel free to just like you raise hands, or you can just kind of interrupt and jump in.
Sounds good.
All right. And so one of the ways that we kind of hinted at is like sort of having these resources on your website can also be a good way to rank in these AI responses. So if you have like the article that explains exactly how to use AI SEO for your small business, the AI is likely to actually reference that when it pulls the search, right? So it goes over and it says, okay, who would this small business want to work with for AI SEO? And if you have that article that says exactly how to do it on your site, it's probably going to reference you as one of the materials. It's more likely to reference you as for one of those materials than if you don't have anything like that, because it basically goes through, even if you do that service, if you don't have anything that references that in terms of materials, it's not going to pull it and then reference it in a response. What do you think about that, Ian? Like, is that kind of one of the ways to play this, is make more resources?
I think resources is good. I think any way to get engagement through the site is good. And then one that, yeah, I think the metadata piece is interesting because that sort of fell off my radar as far as priority things to do with sites. But from what I understand, that the bots do kind of comb that data as well. But yeah, I think having resources is great. Like the more stuff you can link to, the more also that the content can be original is important. So not having AI write the content, I think is another important piece.
So on the metadata piece, how can a small business owner kind of think through that? What should they check? What should they think about as far as the metadata for their site?
I think looking at keywords is probably the best way to do it. I'm not a web expert, so I'm not sure exactly the process to get in there and do it. But I know really focusing on the keywords is going to be priority.
I mean, because it's still the same. It's still a lot of the same stuff that has you rank in traditional SEO, because the same. So in that response, the earlier one, those 4 links are effectively the same 4 links that show up if you just search Annovation. So it's taking the top 4 in general. All right. On to the next topic, unless there's any other questions first. All right, moving on. Oh, there we go. So next we got live selling. Has anyone heard of live selling? I know Ian, you've heard of it. Scott, you heard of that term before?
Yes. Well, look, when you put it into the agenda, I jumped and looked at it. So go ahead.
Perfect. Okay. So live selling is kind of what it sounds like. It's basically when you're selling on a live format. Think I mean, we've kind of had this for a long time. So it's both not that new, but also sort of new, because you can do it on a lot of these social media platforms. And it's gaining a lot of popularity. So if you think like a telemarketing thing, or I guess more like a what's the midnight paid programming, basically they're just like doing the
QVC?
Yeah, that. It's basically QVC. It's effectively that type of selling, except rather than having to get onto a TV channel to do that, you're able to just do it on your social media site. And you can see this is starting. It's popping up on Amazon. It's very common on TikTok. There's a lot going on Instagram. China is actually really big here. Like there's a lot of Chinese companies that are live selling. That has been a big like technique for selling there. So effectively what it is you go live and you talk about your product and you answer questions. And one of the interesting things is, instead of the listener calling in, they're able to message into the chat on things that they would like to know about the product. Sometimes you can even bring them onto the live and they can ask questions directly. But it's a very transparent kind of way where you're, especially for a small business, you're very much in the, like, how do I explain this? You're very down to earth and like authentic in your sale. They're getting access directly to you to make the sale. It's like you're guiding them through the sale, but like you're not you can think of all the ways that you would have to optimize your marketing and your website or all these other platforms to get someone to feel confident checking out like that, but you're able to actually walk them through the process. So, Ian, do you want to kind of take?
I'm seeing Whitney's hand raised. You got to take a peek.
Oh, I'm curious, Alec, are you seeing people use live selling when they have a service-based business versus a product-based business? And can you give an example of the platform they were using for that?
Yeah, so I mean, it could be done with a service. I think it's a lot more common for a product, just because you have something physical to show people. But it's not like it couldn't be done with a service. You just explain what you do, when someone would need you, and really just walk them through, like you're answering questions about kind of what your service is and how it works.
Ultimately, I'm going to take that a step further if I could. You know, what we do, because first of all, we're all service oriented on the phone right now, right? On this. So what we do has some importance. The results of what we do has incredible importance. And ultimately, how our interaction and what we deliver makes the person feel is the secret sauce. So I remember back in the day when I was in a direct sales role, and one of the things that we would do is if I was working with, let's just say, the Office of Finance and a CFO, you want him to feel like you're supporting him to be a champion in front of the CEO. So as a consultant, as an advisor, as a salesperson who's providing a service, ultimately you want to A, solve the problem, right? And B, make him feel great about how you did it. And I have to think that Whitney's world in particular would fall right into that. How do you feel when you walk in and everything is organized in place? You know where it is. You feel the clutter is gone. And I think that can either be a relief or a feeling of joy and freedom. And I think those are some of the key things that I'm trying to get to when I work with small businesses and career coaching, is that the value of what I provide is beyond just getting the job or helping them increase the value of their company. It's how they feel about engaging with me and how they feel about the results of our interaction.
Now, my understanding about live selling is that social media platforms make money. They take a percentage of the transactions of the sales through that live selling component. And one thing I didn't realize until not too long ago is that since they're motivated to get a piece of the transaction, they bring customers to your live selling
Good point.
session. So rather, a while ago, I thought, okay, I needed to have this many followers to be effective at that. But really that they will bring customers to you if you're doing that. So like Whitney, with your question, representing a service, I think is difficult because the social media platform won't get a piece of that transaction and they won't be as excited. I think if you were to make a product, even like a basic, like a t-shirt or something very simple that represents what it is you're doing, that might be a way to use that live selling platform to speak to your business.
Yeah, that's interesting because you could kind of use that as a lead magnet too.
Yeah, but I think the product piece is important. because that's how the platforms make money, and the more money they make, the more motivated they are to bring you traffic.
Cool, thank you. We do have a few products that we sell on our site that are related to what we do, so that definitely could be a lead in. So thanks for that idea.
Yeah, and there's some interesting stuff going on in this world, because it was kind of a lot of TikTok. Shop was big with this. This has existed on Amazon. Like, there's people probably live right now on Amazon. No one really watches that I know of. I haven't heard of anyone watching that. But when you're doing this on social media platforms, the reason why on Amazon it's not having the same type of traction is no one goes on Amazon just to like scroll a feed. You're not going to Amazon to scroll a feed of content. You're going to buy something. But when you're on TikTok or when you're on Instagram, you're scrolling through a feed, and sometimes in that feed will just pop up a live that someone's selling their stuff on. So that's why these can be really effective. There's another platform that is kind of a hybrid of this, which is there's a platform called Whatnot, and that's sort of a live auctioning and live selling platform. So that is another interesting avenue. And one of the big proponents that has been talking a lot about live selling lately is Gary Vaynerchuk, if you're familiar with him. So a video that I'd strongly recommend is Why Live Shopping is Disrupting Social Media Forever. And if you just type that into Google, it should be one of the first results. If you type in Gary V live shopping, it'll pop up too. But definitely give that a watch, because it's like that kind of explains exactly what it is, how it works, and really what the opportunity is there. And I think there's probably something there where people may actually start to use this more for making purchase decisions. So if you think of this as like down the line, when people get trained a little bit more on this technique, going and saying, I'm thinking about buying this thing, and then, oh, look, they're live right now. I'm going to go check out their live and ask these questions. It's kind of like open selling hours. It's kind of like when you could go into the store and ask questions of the person. But you're kind of seeing it more in I mean, maybe that's not the best example, but basically you're seeing it more in you're like, you could have the founder literally pitching the product right there. So it's like the person with the highest conviction on the product pitching to thousands of people. So that's one of the ways that it can be used. The other element is that this can be really useful for physical brick and mortar locations where you have times with down traffic. So if you don't have a lot of things going on, Tuesday through Thursday, maybe you turn your location into effectively like a studio, and you're just live selling during that time frame through your studio. Whitney, go ahead.
Yeah, you've got my mind whirring in all different directions. I'm thinking, what can we use live selling for estate sales for clients? I mean, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, live selling for estate sales are really interesting, because I feel like estate sales have been done in kind of this low tech mode for so long. It'll be interesting to see what new ways can you use, what new ways can estate sales be kind of leveraged in this marketplace, so that you're actually clearing more stuff and it's not quite as challenging. I have a buddy who does estate sales stuff, and he's been looking at some of this stuff of adding some tech to estate sales, and it's very interesting, because I think there's some opportunities there.
I think it might be a lot of work from the inventory management side and also from the fulfillment side.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas something like a t-shirt, you can put in 100 units of it in different sizes. Whereas with an estate sale, you have one mirror or something like that, and then you have to figure out shipping on top of it. So that could be, Alec, I don't know what your friends kind of processes and learning about it, but I could see a few things that make it more tricky than the average.
Oh yeah, and that's why it's like you're not going to go listed on Amazon or anything like that, or you're not going to go listed on all these different marketplaces typically, because it's just like you have such a high quantity of random things. But if you were live and people are making the sale on the live, and you're just kind of walking through and saying, hey, do you want this? This is the price, and you're kind of you're giving them the details on it, and then they're making the decision. It can work a little bit smoother. And then that's where platforms like Whatnot also have some things that make that a little bit cleaner. You can do some auctioning and other things like that.
Yeah, the auction piece is really interesting.
Yeah, and Whatnot is actually a common site for collector cards and things like that. So you'll see a lot of those changing hands there. So that's kind of one of the core markets of that site has been that the collector card market. And as you look at kind of where that goes, they're looking at more product focused stuff now. One of the challenges that I see with that though is how many people are going to go onto another app specifically so that they can buy something. It's like I don't know. They go to Amazon unless they're getting like a specific deal. Like I think they're gonna try to go specifically to an app only if it has some specific deal, not just because they're gonna scroll it just for fun.
Yeah, and with auctions, I think a huge part of the auction is having the right people at the auction. I deal a fair amount with fine art, and that's always a thing. It's like you need the right people in the room to bid against each other. Otherwise, you're just going to give it away for the entry price.
Mhm.
So I don't know about Whatnot, how they bring in bidders, but
Mhm. And I think it's pretty much it's all over. So like anyone could be a bidder. It just depends on how many people start following you and you build up a following around you.
mhm.
It I don't know how much Whatnot will be the platform, but I think you can start to see how social media really changes here, and you have people using their social media accounts more like that front door of the business. It's kind of like the social media becomes basically the storefront. So you're getting people on your social media, they're going and they can actually make purchases off of your social media. It's really part of your online storefront.
Alec, can I ask you what social media platforms do you use personally? Like what is Annovation on, and what do you find success with?
So typically LinkedIn, just because B2B, it's LinkedIn's kind of the best for that. But I am looking more at Facebook and Instagram just so that I'm present on. So there's basically four: Facebook, Instagram, X, and LinkedIn. And there's kind of I think of it as like one place where you're really present, and then a couple other places where you just actually have a pulse. Like if they went there and they're like they look for you, they can see you. It's not like your main spot where you hang out, but they effectively it's like they can hear about you, go to their social media of choice, search you up, and say like, okay, yep, they exist. Um, and so effectively, it's more like a lead nurture thing than like a actual marketing channel for you.
And my understanding is that TikTok is sort of the best when it comes to live selling as far as their support and the number of transactions they handle. Is that your understanding as well?
Uh, TikTok is good. Of course, there's questions about where TikTok's going to go.
Sure.
So you don't know if you're going to have TikTok forever. But really, you can see Instagram works well for live selling. TikTok works well for live selling. I don't think you can do any live selling on LinkedIn that I know of, so that's not really a channel. But basically, Instagram and TikTok, I think, are the two platforms. I think you can actually do some YouTube product stuff as well there.
I've been reluctant to embrace TikTok just because what you just said, that, will it be around? And if I'm going to put so much energy into a platform, I want to make sure it's something stable. So I've really been more on the Instagram side of things. But I'm not sure how, I don't know. I'm not sure how interesting Instagram is at the moment. I don't know how long that's going to be grabbing people's interest either. So I think part of what's cool here is keeping an eye out for the next thing, whatever that.
Whitney, you had your hand up.
You mentioned being on X, and I just didn't know. I'm thinking switching to Blue Sky. I don't want to support anything to do with X, especially right now. So I didn't know if Blue Sky is a player in the game, or if is there any traction there? Is that worthwhile?
Blue Sky is definitely smaller, but one of the interesting things about Blue Sky is that it's actually part of it's this weird term called the Fediverse, which is basically like federated social media. And what that actually means is think of it like social media where you actually own the users, and you own you own your followers. So basically, like, if you move somewhere, you can actually keep some of your followers. It's not all dictated by one social media platform. You could change the algorithm, you could change certain things about how you're viewing your feed. And that's because it's an open source protocol. But Blue Sky itself is its own specific platform with its own specific rules. But what I'm talking about is the protocol action where you can actually start to have a little bit more control over your social media. So Blue Sky, from that perspective, is very interesting. It doesn't have traction yet. It's getting more traction. I'd say like it's the most well-known out of the ones that are kind of in this new type of federated social media. Now, what'll be interesting to see is if that does start to actually catch on, when people start moving over to Blue Sky, it's not a bad place to post right now, because if you're posting on Blue Sky, you're in a smaller pool, and that's not too bad because you can post in a small pool and dominate a small pool. So if you can be one of the top voices in a pool that's not incredibly saturated, you can be a lot better at actually grabbing the attention of people.
Alec, what has your experience been like on X over the last, say, 6 months?
I don't really post on it. I just have an account. That's one of the ones where I'm like, be present on, like, exist on it, have an account somewhere, but you don't actually have to post on it.
Because all I've heard is people leaving.
Yeah.
I haven't heard a lot of great success stories or fantastic engagement. Once in a while, a public figure will post something and that'll get picked up by the media. And from what I understand, there are many fake profiles on there that, aren't really of value.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's basically figure out where you want to be, like what platform you want to like be very present on, and then which ones are kind of like your satellites, where you're present there, like you exist there. If someone searched, they're like, okay, yep, this is where their business is. But that really serves only as like yep, you exist, and this is where people can learn more about you.
I will say, without getting into politics, and maybe this is something for a future meeting, I do understand that X is coming out with a lot of like a payment platform and an email service, and they're looking to layer a lot of other things onto the platform. So that could be interesting, especially if they have a lot of government support and
Mhm.
kind of running that space.
Well, and it'll be interesting to watch because one of the ideas was the Everything app was the part of the goal.
Mhm.
So if that does become more successful, that is something to watch. But like, I mean, one of the ways that you could play it is basically just having an account there so that you are present. And then if there is something interesting or useful there, you can use it. If not, you don't even use it at all. So that's kind of how I think about social media things. Like you might as well go grab all the different tags on different social media sites so that you have them. Um, and then use the ones that you want to use, and then don't use the ones that like you use the ones that you're going to use as your use one as your main, and then use a couple others just to be present on so that people can find you easily. All right. On to the next one. So we kind of already got onto this topic a little bit, but content machines. So this is the rise of AI influencers and AI content. So there's some fun stuff happening. I don't know if you guys are on Facebook much, but if you go on Facebook, I always tend to find these where it's like some very nice looking house layout or something like that. It's like, look at this beautiful tiny home, and it's this shot, and it shows this very nice aesthetic home. But if you start to look more into the details of it, it's actually just an AI generated image. And there are people commenting, "Oh, this is incredible. Look how beautiful this house is. Wow, this is phenomenal." And it's just like an AI generated like house that doesn't exist. So
Well, we see that. Um, I believe I could be wrong, and I would have to ask the architects. But at the Multnomah Club, there is a rendering of the reading lounge and a rendering of the pub that looks a little AI-ish to me. But and I so that part of the process of an architect's job could be streamlined or, in theory, eliminated in some regards for the person that historically has done the renderings, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's that's one of the interesting AI generated architecture pieces for architecture concepts. You'd also see that in kind of early movie concepting. There could be some work that's done there where you're kind of doing some of that initial storyboarding and trying to nail down some elements. You could probably use some tools there. Um,
But on the other hand, what are we accustomed to, or what do we want to accept, right? I mean, there was criticism on an Anheuser-Busch Super Bowl commercial that it was just too much of an AI experience, right? And people were being critical of it. But from a developmental perspective, I have to assume it was extraordinarily more cost effective than storyboards and, you know,
mhm. Yeah, I mean the Coca-Cola commercial is one of the other famous ones.
yeah,
Um,
yep, that recently, yep, same timing.
yep.
It's just going to keep getting better. I mean, at this point, it is most of the time easy to tell the difference. And I would say some of the design choices with AI are generally questionable. But it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next year or two with just quality. And, could any of us make a commercial in 5 minutes, just by
Mhm.
interacting with AI?
Well, I think that's the interesting part is like people people are like talking about how, oh man, that's AI generated, and then they say that like it's a bad thing, but there's going to be a point when it's good enough that you don't know. And so they're like, is that they're like, that's AI generated and it's a question mark. They just don't know if it's AI generated or not. And so they're kind of saying it because they're curious. They're like, it might be, I don't know. But then once we push beyond that point, then I think people stop caring whether something's AI generated or not. It's whether the ad actually kind of translates what you're trying to translate to them.
So when we're talking about AI influencers, do you see a world in which they're essentially like AI bots that run their own travel site or their own whatever it might be?
They actually already exist, which is weird. There are several AI influencers that are basically they're fully fake accounts. Well, fake in that they're a real account, but they basically are not a real person. There are interesting applications though where you have like an AI model that's hooked up to post on social media, but one of the interesting things is they have the feed running of the AI model's thought process. So you can see what the AI model is thinking, and then it'll make a social media post.
Actually, now that I think about it, I got hit up on LinkedIn like a week ago. I got a request, and the note was, I'm an AI bot from California that does X, Y, and Z. It was just too weird. I was like, delete immediately.
There you go.
But I mean, they weren't hiding it at all. It was just like, hey, I'm this bot. This is what I do. You want to connect? So like,
Well, and if you look at like a tool like Notebook LM, have you listened to like some of the AI podcasting from that?
no, I'm not familiar.
Has anyone on the call messed around with Notebook LM and
No.
seen some of the AI podcasts? Okay, I will make a quick detour to that because that'll be fun.
I
But
have done. Oh, I was just
Yeah.
going to say that, yeah, I've been doing LM Notebook and I love it. It's really great for helping putting programs together.
Yeah, and the
I've been
voice.
listening.
Hello.
Hi.
But yeah, the voice is incredible too. It's like it sounds very human-like.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you could take, because a lot of times when I'm putting programs together, I'm looking at a variety of resources, right? So I love the fact like you could take all of these resources and it pulls information from these resources when you ask it a question. But it also references where right now, for example, I have like 12 different resources I'm referring to put a program together, and it references as it tells you. So, if you ask it a question, it also identifies the reference to the resource that it pulls from, so you can go back into that specific area in the document. It links to that, so it's very helpful and really helps from a time standpoint. Versus me having to go through again and read all of those different resources, which will take me hours and hours of time. So, yeah, but I'll let you demonstrate.
I need to reshare my screen because I didn't share it with audio. Second. All right. There we go. So effectively what you can do with Notebook LM is you can add sources and then you upload your files. You can do Google Docs, Google Slides, website, YouTube videos, copy text. You can have a bunch of them in here and then you can toggle them on and off. And then what it does is when you ask it a question, is it will actually cite, it's only citing your sources. So if I go here, it pulls that up, but then if I click it, this is actually where it references this in the text of these like massive 300-page PDFs. So this is like a combined, I think, 600 pages of stuff, and basically it's going through it and able to give me overviews, timelines, things like that. Like here's what the key terms are, or key themes. This basically summarizes all of them. And it gives me responses that are tailored just to these things. So it cuts down on the hallucinations significantly, because effectively, instead of being a very large language model that has all this data across all of the internet, it's very narrow to just a couple things, a couple sources that you give it. And if I asked it a question that's outside of these sources, it would actually tell me that it doesn't have any information on that. And then what you can do is you can also go and hit this play button. And when you hit play on this, it plays an audio overview of the material. And you can customize it so you could have it, you could ask it a specific question. And then there's also interactive mode, but I'll show you that in a second.
Welcome to the deep dive. You know those stacks of articles and reports, the ones you keep meaning to read? Well, that's where we come in. We boil them down to just the good stuff. And today, we're tackling not one, but two of ARK Invest's Big Ideas reports. We have the 2024 edition and the fresh off the press 2025 one.
It's like a cheat sheet for the future of tech.
Exactly. AI, robotics, energy, Bitcoin, you name it, we're diving in.
And that future might be closer than you think. Some of the 2024 predictions, they're already happening.
So you can see kind of just the tone of that is very human. Like it doesn't sound that robotic. There's a little bit, like you'll catch little tiny inflections and things like that that seem off. But if you gave that to most people, or most people listening to it would say that that sounds like a person, generally.
And you don't need to prompt that. It just, you upload a document and it just generates an audio overview.
Upload the document and then just hit load audio overview, and then it just does it.
That's wild.
The other
Crazy.
the other really cool thing is you can go into interactive mode, and I can actually dialogue back and forth with them. So I could basically play the regular audio, and then if there's something that I want to interrupt and ask a question on, I can ask that question, and then it'll dive into that part of the topic. So I'll demonstrate that here.
Welcome to the deep dive. You know those stacks of articles and reports, the ones you keep meaning to read? Well, that's where we come in. We boil them down. Oh, wait, someone wants to join. Hey, go for it.
So I'm very curious about autonomous vehicles. Can you talk about autonomous vehicles and how those have changed between the 2024 report and the 2025 report?
Absolutely. That's a great question, and we can definitely dive into that.
Yeah, let's unpack the autonomous vehicle space.
In the 2024 report, ARK estimated that robotaxi platforms could redefine personal mobility and generate $28 trillion in enterprise value over the next 5 to 10 years.
Okay, that's a big number.
It is. They noted robotaxis were operating in about 20 cities globally.
What about in the 2025 report?
In the 2025 report, they highlight that Waymo and Baidu are responsible for most of the autonomous rides in the US and China.
Gotcha.
Also, the 2025 report emphasizes Tesla's data advantage.
How so?
They have access to significantly more driving data than their competitors, which could give them a competitive edge when they launch their robotaxis.
So you can see how that I was just able to interrupt it, and then it could actually kind of go through and dialogue back with me. So like I could be listening to that in the car, or wherever on a walk, and then I could say, oh, I have this question about this thing, and then I could get deeper into that.
It's amazing.
So useful AI tool for sure. But one of the ways that you could use this for making content is you could use AI content in a number of ways. You could use it directly. You could use AI to directly make content for you. You could also use AI effectively just to speed up your process. So if you have a bunch of research docs or something like that, you might throw them into Notebook LM and kind of start talking with the documents to try and figure out what you want to pull out of that. What's the important pieces that you want to highlight for content? Same thing for if you put specific you could put all of your different articles into this, and then you could ask it for specific things for making for like specific pieces of content that you could pull out of several different articles. So if you had like 10 different articles in here, and then you ask, what are 5 tips that you would have for someone who is in this stage of their career or something like that? And then it comes out with 5 tips based off of all of your different articles that you've already written. That could be another way to make content with this.
Do you know of any sort of large brands that are using these tools effectively? Or are they still sort of in the development stage?
I think there's a lot of brands that are using these tools, but I don't think they're going to tell you that they're using these tools, because so many people have this kind of stigma around AI generated content. It may be AI generated, but like the thing is, if it's good content, it's good content. If it's useful content, it's useful content. So, I mean, even if you created it off of all your different articles and it's summarizing those, you already made all the articles.
Right.
So I think there's kind of like this fear around saying that they're using these AI tools, but the AI tools are kind of things that you could use to accelerate your progress through content creation. So like you can accelerate your content creation process with this stuff. You could be really, really lazy about it and just ask ChatGPT to make, full posts for you. And maybe it's good and maybe it's bad, because that's part of the thing is you want to make sure you're not too lazy about it. You need to make sure you're actually making good content. But one of the things that I think AI can do effectively is it can help solve that blank page problem. So you can get from, your nothing, like what am I going to post, to okay, I have these couple posts lined up. And there's a whole spectrum of AI assisted content, because like you could make a you could write your whole article and then basically have like have Grammarly helping you just edit it at the end. Technically you're using AI in the process, but like it's at the very end and you're just using it to help you clean some things up. You could use AI in the brainstorming process though too, or you could just use AI for the whole content generation. So there's a spectrum of AI generated content.
I find just to share, and I know obviously some people at Google are using it. That's how I kind of heard about it. But I think it's great when you use LM Notebook with a combination of Gemini or ChatGPT. That's how I've been using it. So because I use the LM Notebook to just be able to extract information. Like sometimes I'll have like 15 different articles I need to reference about a certain topic I'm writing on or doing a program for, and it just really helps synthesize a lot of that, or ask it a question and pull the reference point from that. And then I'm using a combination of Gemini or ChatGPT. Then if I want to, ask it questions about that specific subtopic related to that area, or give me other references related to that, and I can just download them or pull them from my Google Drive and add it in. And so it kind of helps me as I'm developing, how I've been using it as I'm developing programs. It's been a really useful tool.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and there's different ways that you can approach it too, where I think one of the things we did for you, Aoife, is I think we did a custom GPT, right? We made a Gemini gem. You guys are familiar with custom GPTs and Gemini gems? Have you heard of those?
No.
So effectively what that is, that's when you're layering you're basically giving the model extra context. So you're saying, here's a document that I want you to reference. Here's a prompt that I want you to think of every time I ask you a question. Take into account this prompt and this extra document, so that you're using that for your response. And so when you think about the things that you can do with that, you could give it your branding guidelines, you could give it several of your articles, and you could say, hey, every time I ask you this question, respond with accordance to these, and you're designed to be the best social media assistant ever. You're supposed to help me make content, and you're kind of like the best social media creator ever. So you give it this context and these guidelines on how you want it to respond to you, and then every time you prompt it, and you would prompt it just like a normal normal AI prompt. Here, I'll actually show it here. So you'd prompt it just like a normal, using the normal prompting bar, but instead you would use something called like a gem here. And those basically have it has like a name, instructions, and knowledge. And the knowledge is basically added files. The instructions, those are things that you give it where you're kind of telling it things that it will keep as context when you prompt it. So every time you ask it, it has this background knowledge. And so you could use that as something in your process as well.
Alec and Ian, thank you very much. I've run into a time limit at this point, and so I'm going to have to drop off. Okay. Thank you for providing this platform and the opportunity to learn. At least, for me, it's all brand new for the most part. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for hopping on, Scott.
Bye bye. Take care.
Take care. All right. So the activity here, if you have the time to do it, kind of brainstorm how might you use AI to speed up or improve your content creation. Just kind of something to keep in mind of what ways could you use it. You don't have to use it for your full content, but what ways could you just make it a little bit faster? Maybe use it in the brainstorming process, maybe use it in sort of the refining process, or maybe you're kind of using it to actually make some content, and then you're using it for that first draft. So those are all things that you could think through there. Any questions on that before we wrap up? Ian, anything you want to add?
No, I think this is great. It's a lot to think about. I'm curious to see which of these things people implement in the coming month and what the result is from that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think, and I'm curious to see where this space evolves, because we kind of have this like, is it AI generated? Is it not AI generated? And if it is AI generated, people feel duped, but are they always going to feel that way? Or are people just going to accept it as part of what people are doing so that they can actually get more done in their day?
I'd imagine at some point the AI content will be better than the human content as far as just more informed and more comprehensive. So that may change.
I think we don't want to accept that, but I think that's a likely future. All
Sure.
right. So that's pretty much it. Thank you for coming to the very first future of marketing. And so we'll basically be posting this recording in the Annovation community. Then you can continue the conversation there. There's a whole talks tab where basically you can, I'll be posting the recording, and then we'll kind of have more dialogue there if you're interested in following up. And then send us send us your questions. Love to hear from you. And then we'll see you next month.
Thanks, Alec. And thanks, Ian, for facilitating this.
Thank you both so much. This was awesome.
Thanks for stopping by.
Take care.
Yeah.
Bye.